when the minimum wage of the civil servant is a matter of nothing, this is what it will continue to attract to the nation.
Huh? What you bring come? I say, what you bring come?
What you want give me? Hey, wait till now, what you want give me? I give me something.
How disgraceful and selfish. They knew that this lady is a foreigner who braved all the advice from Western countries to their citizens against traveling to Nigeria, especially by road. This lady would have changed the narrative that Nigeria isn't as bad as it is portrayed. But for these two selfish and corrupt individuals, they brought shame to the country on an international scale.
The corruption in Nigeria's system is too much. Why is it that it's only the poor they are using to be showing all this example? Oh, they don't have money to buy their way out. Just like what we saw during presidential election. They are now in the offices. Corruption.
Authority are the ones who bring shame to the country all the time. In the mid-2000s, the then governor of oil-rich Bayelsa State was caught with more than £1 million in cash in London. He was detained despite having immunity. Of course, that immunity only applies to Nigeria. He was later released on bail. He committed another crime by jumping bail. He later escaped the UK by disguising as a lady to pass through the airport security. So you can imagine someone that was elected as a governor. He's supposed to know the law. He's supposed to at least have human decency. He was able to launder money in cash to London. He was arrested. He also jumped bail to come back to Nigeria. So to the UK authorities, if a Nigerian at that level could do this, what will ordinary Nigerians be doing? So you can imagine how they changed their policy just because of that singular act. It might have contributed to their subjecting Nigerians to thorough searches because of what the governor did. So you can imagine the harm elected individuals, people that are supposed to know, people that are supposed to care about our reputation, that are supposed to project our image in good light. Imagine the harm they bring to Nigerians at the international level. Also, another governor of oil-rich Delta State laundered so much money into the UK that he was sentenced to prison after first of all running away from justice in Nigeria. He ran away to Dubai, and the UK authorities had to file a repatriation request with the UAE authorities. He was eventually repatriated to the UK, where he faced trial and was sentenced to prison. Now, let's assume there's a scale to measure crime. That will mean that the higher in authority you are, and if you commit a crime, that means the more severe the punishment should be, because people in higher authority should have a higher moral compass. Now, at the lower level, these police officers demanded bribe from a foreigner. The governors, who were heads of subnational entities in Nigeria, laundered millions of dollars of state money to London. What about the person sitting at the top, directing affairs in Nigeria today? It was revealed as far as last year, before the presidential elections of this year, that he was involved in money laundering and narcotics trafficking in the United States. That happened by the time he was still living in the US, before coming back to Nigeria in the early 90s to contest for elections. And his party neglected all this and still made him their flag bearer. As if that was not enough, he contested the election, he didn't win, they did all they could, rig the elections, bribe their way. The opposition challenged the results of the election at the courts.
And they did not even bother to place any such credible evidence before this court. Were they expecting the court to go and gather evidence from the streets or from the markets, or to be persuaded or intimidated by threats on social media?
The unimaginable happened. The judges that are supposed to uphold Nigerian law and interpret them correctly threw away everything. They went as far as defending the respondents. It was that bad. They even blamed the EU for writing a damning report about the elections. The EU donated millions of euros to support the Nigerian presidential election, and they monitored the election. So when they wrote their report, it wasn't a surprise because everyone saw the heist. They rigged the election. The Electoral Commission changed the rules midway. They were supposed to publish the election results in real time. They refused to do that so as to allow manipulation. So when the EU report came out, no one was surprised. But the courts had to blame them and do literal whataboutism in order to justify upholding someone who has a criminal past. No one hates Bola Tinubu. But what people don't like is the disgrace on Nigeria because of his past. Is he the best we can produce? No, not at all. Let's even assume that his party and powers that be wanted to make sure that the president comes from his ethnicity. Why didn't they pick someone else from the same ethnicity? Because it's not as if he's even competent. Look at what he has been doing since he's been in power. More than 7 months in, things have become worse. Nigerians are worse off than they were in just January this year. The suffering is just too much for poor Nigerians. This has led to many multinationals leaving the country. Yes, many are also planning to leave because if you don't have many people with high purchasing power, there's no need for people to continue manufacturing locally. Because your people must first of all buy their products in large quantities before they can say, hey, let's expand, let's even expand to start exporting to West African countries. From there, we can look at exporting to Europe, Asia, America. That's how it works. By the way, the narcotics trafficking proceeds worth $460,000 that Tinubu forfeited to the US authorities in the early 90s wasn't the only disgrace he brought to Nigerians. During the electioneering season, it was also revealed that he took up someone else's identity in the US. One of the presidential candidates brought that to court, so he went as far as going to the United States to obtain a subpoena to force the Chicago State University, where he claimed to have attended, to bring the evidence in court. He gathered all this evidence. The university said they never issued him a certificate, which means he forged the certificate, which also proves that he never attended the school, because if he did, why will he go to the extent of forging the university certificate? It doesn't make sense. So he brought all this evidence to court and the judges threw everything away. The judges went as far as reprimanding him for bringing evidence that proves that Tinubu forged his certificate. So you can understand the disgrace not just at the national level but at the international level, because many world leaders were aware of the matter when he was in court and they also know his past. How can Nigeria allow such a person to lead them when they have millions of other intellectuals who can do the job? So you can understand how the selfishness of corrupt, unpatriotic individuals is bringing shame to Nigerians. Granted that the entry-level salary of the police officers, the army, and other security agents is quite low. They are paid about $50 per month, which is quite low. It's not workable. You can't take them home. But it doesn't excuse the corruption, the massive intimidation, to the extent that they had to demand bribes from a foreigner. Such a disgrace. If these guys thought about the national interest, they wouldn't have bothered a foreigner. And it's not by force to work for the police. They can find another job if they think the $50 they receive as salaries a month is not enough for them. That doesn't excuse the fact that the government must increase their salary to something worthwhile, to something that is worth the amount of risk that they take on a daily basis. Nigeria is a strange country where people who do nothing are paid much higher compared to people who are in the front lines. The salary of a worker must be equivalent to the amount of work that he puts in on a daily basis. The salaries of Nigerian politicians are in the millions of naira, higher than even Western countries. Compare that to the salaries of professors and doctors in Nigeria, who earn around 400 and 500,000 naira a month. Even with the millions the politicians earn, they are still not satisfied with it. They still steal more and launder them abroad. So this is where the problem lies. They are not patriotic, they do not think about the national interest, but they see the opposition as being unpatriotic because they point out their lies, their failures, and their stealing. And the worst part is that the poor people that are most affected by the poor policies of the politicians are the ones that will move quickly to defend them with all they have, as if their life depends on it. Thanks.
As a matter of fact, lack of strong leadership has made a mess of our nation, Nigeria, today. Our nation is bleeding from all sides, politically, economically, and socially. Our nation is experiencing turmoil and moral decay, characterized by religious conflict and corruption.